How's it going, everyone? I am Jeremy Alexander, and welcome back to another video tutorial for our platformer mini-series. So in the last tutorial, we did all of the importing, we did a whole lot of setup stuff, and now we're ready to actually start programming, and we have a lot to program. But before we begin, let's actually change the collision. So if you go to the View tab, and you hit Show Collision Polys, you're going to see every single bounding box for the tile map and for all the sprites. So if I click this, now you'll actually see this red border appear, and this will tell us where we have our collision. Now you can see that I missed a few objects, and a few objects do not have bounding boxes. So let's do that first. Let's do this for here, and let's just set everything to a bounding box at first. That way we can start from the same position, and we know that at least that's not an issue if we come across any issues. So for literally everything you see, if it's a circle or not, we want to set it to a bounding box. And you're going to notice that as a circle, it has more points, and the fewer points, the better. So let's see what we can do here. I mean, we can add 1 or 2 points, but you don't want to have as many as the circles do. So let me just keep doing that, especially for these spikes here. We want them to be bounding boxes because otherwise it'll just get too particular and it won't collide to where you think it will collide. So let's just set everything to a bounding box. This spike especially needs to be a bounding box. But we could still crop images and we can still make them smaller. We haven't really messed around with that. And this needs to be a bounding box. Now our sprites are done, we can actually go to our tile map here. And you noticed before when we hit play that it kind of didn't match up. And that's because this tile, which is this top tile here, I need to double click on it and I need to move it down. So if I were to grab one of these points here, you can see down here my point is going to give me an X and Y. So I can actually edit this X and Y without actually dragging it. I can just type in the value that I want here. And if you'll notice, when I drag this down on the Y, hold on, let's make sure that updates, and I let go, you can see that it's only going to change on the Y. And that's what I want to do. I want to put this down to 5, and I want to leave that at 0. And the same thing over here. I want to put this point down to 5 as well. And now I actually have a middle ground for every single collision. So you can see here by updating that, and if I zoom in, now our player will collide right there. And because I have Snap to Grid turned on, it's not letting me show you, but it'll actually collide there when it hits with the box. So if I hit play, we can actually see it now actually collide on the ground, which is really nice. And there we go. But we still have things to fix. We still need to fix the jump and the motion here, and I think our idle is a little bit too quick. And we also need to fix the outside the canvas area, the actual unbounded scrolling. So what we're going to do to fix the unbounded scrolling first is we're actually going to click on the background, and we're going to unlock it, and we're going to go to the background color here. And what we want to do is we want to actually change it to background color equals transparent equals no. We're still going to clear the background, but by doing so, if I go here and I go to other, I'm able to select any color that I want anywhere. So I'm going to select this color. I'm going to hit OK. And let's see if that messes up by clearing the background. We might have to change that back to on. But now we can actually see that we have our project and everything outside of it is the same color. So now it looks more like our level, which is pretty nice. But this is still a pretty bare level. So in this lecture, we're going to be adding a whole lot to it. And the first thing we're going to start with is programming the player, which might take a little while. This tile right here, we can actually just remove altogether. Because, I mean, you can leave it in there if you want to mess with these collisions, but you don't have to. Now, for collisions like this, you can see here for a corner piece, which is, I believe, this. Let me deselect this. This corner piece, and if I want to match it up, I can just grab the draw tool, and you can easily draw your own level with this. You don't even have to get a free program like Tiled. You can just draw your own right in the tile map editor here. But if you see here, I'm matching this tile up with this, so that way I know which one it is. And if I double click, I can open up the collision polygon to edit it. So now I know that the other tile, the Y, needs to be at 5. This needs to be at 0. I just moved it over. So I'm going to do that for over here as well. I'm going to move that down to 5. And I'm going to move that down to 5. And for right now, we can leave it at 5. That way it matches up. But if we needed to actually match up the Y with something else, we could do that as well. So I'm going to grab the eraser tool. I'm just going to erase these 3 tiles here because even though I need to have them there, I'd rather have it as a platform. And actually, you know what? No, we can leave it in. I was trying to think if I wanted to put it there, if it made sense to have it as its own object, but we could just include it in the tile map object. That way it only loads once. And what we're going to do is we're going to put 3 spikes on top of it here so we can actually maneuver that. And let me see if that's where I wanted to put it or not. I don't think so. So everything I just said, you just leave it there, because that actually makes more sense to me now that I think about why I put it there in the first place. So let me do the collision for over here as well. And let me double click on this and the same thing. And you want to keep the numbers to be the same all around so you can have flawless collision. I know that there will be one point when we enter the boss that there's going to be a hump that we need to actually calculate for, which looks nice. And then we can go over all of the collision later. I can see here that this is not colliding, and I don't know which piece that is. So I can actually replace this tile altogether. Let me deselect this so you can see. I can replace that tile altogether if it looks right. Otherwise, if it doesn't look right, I can put that back in, and I actually should probably fix these collision points as well. But this just gives you a whole lot more control than you would have, and less objects, since you're not using individual sprites for every single one. So let me go over here, and it looks like I have to fix this guy too, which isn't really that big of a pain after you get it all set up and running. Then it runs pretty well. So make sure that you always go back to the mouse, because otherwise you'll start clicking things and you'll be like, why didn't it work? It's because you had the pencil tool selected or something like that. So let me just double check everything else here. I think we're good for right now. We won't have that many collision issues now that we put all the main sprites down to 5 on the Y. We might have, and what I was talking about before is right here, we have this little hump to calculate for, but we'll do that when we actually get to the boss. But everything else looks really good. So now if I hit save and if I hit play, then I should be good to go here. Let me use the arrow keys, trying to use W, A, S, and D. And I should be able to, oh, you know what? We could do it for these platforms as well. We could just quickly do that. Why not? This might need to go down further than 5. This might need to go down to 10. So let's put that down to 10 and see how that looks. And we could do that for over here as well. And we only need to do it for the top and not the bottom. So let's do it for this one. And let's just put these at 10 and 10. And oops, not the Y. We want the Y to be at, there we go. I mean, not the X. We want the Y to be at 10, not the X at 10. And for this, we want the, there we go. And let's do it for over here as well. Move the Y down to 10, and let's move the X down to 10. Oh, I keep doing that, not 10. There we go. Okay, you have to select the individual point. That's why it's getting confusing, because it's if you don't select the individual point, this side is always going to be at 0, and this side will always be at 32, and they'll be flipped for the X. So hopefully that made sense to you. Now that we have our tile map collision fixed, we can actually go and start our player. So let's do that. Let's click on our player object, and then let's lock this background layer altogether. And the tile map layer should not be on this object, just so I know. I was always clicking the background. Okay, let's go to the entities layer, and let's click on our object player, and let's give it some instance variables. Now this is going to be specific to this instance of the player. If we had more copies of it, then it would have different values, and that's going to be very important when it comes to doing sign IDs, and it's actually important when we do menu IDs as well, because we want to have the same object, but we want to have each object have a different instance. So if I give it the instance variable of ID and I copy and paste the same object, I want one object to do one thing and I want the other object to do the other thing, but I want it to be the same exact looking object. So it'll make sense in a minute, but these are very important. It's a very important programming thing to have, and it's in every software. So hopefully you can, hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully you understand what to do from there. So I want to make some variables here. I'm going to make 3. The first is going to be my jump, and I want to set this to -550, and that's actually going to be our player jump, and we're going to actually set that on our own versus using the platform's jump strength. So we're going to put that to -550, and that's going to be on the Y, because when you go on the Y-axis here, it's in negatives, so if we were to go up. Then what I want to do is I want to make another text variable, or not a text variable, another number variable, and I want to call this health. And I want that to equal 0. We're going to do health in a very interesting way, but I think it'll make sense to you in a very easy way. And then finally, we want to make a Boolean value here. We want to make a Boolean called PowerUp enabled and hit OK. Boolean is just a true or false statement, so we want this to be false by default. Okay, so now that we have our instance variables for our player, let's actually take a look at our platform parameters here. So we can pretty much leave all of these alone except for a few things. The first thing I want to do is I want to turn off the default controls just because it kind of gets in the way, and we are going to add them back in, but I want to just leave it off for now. That way I control when it's on or off. Then I want to actually add a jump sustain. So this is actually going to help the player feel more natural, and you can mess around with this number all you want. I want to do it for half a second, so I'm going to put it in at 30 milliseconds. Then what we're going to do is we are going to leave everything else, I believe. We can move the jump strength down to positive 550 if we really want to. And that is it. I think we don't have to do much else. Let's add some more behaviors, though, to our player. So the behaviors that I want to add are destroy outside layout, just in case it happens to break something and get outside the layout. We want it to destroy itself. Otherwise, that would break our game. I want to add a timer to the player for the future, and I also want to add the flash behavior. Now, we're going to go over these when they become relevant, but until then, we have our player pretty much finished. So let's go to our event sheet. Now, for the most part, I'm going to be doing everything in this event sheet until it comes time to break it down and kind of structure our game a little bit more and actually have it more organized. But I hope that way I don't lose any of you by making 1,000 event sheets, which I'm not going to do, but hopefully you can all follow along and add to your event sheet. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a new event for our keyboard. So we're going to go to our plugins and we're going to go to our keyboard. And in our keyboard, what we're going to do is we're going to find out if a key is down. And in this case, we're going to find out if the up arrow is down. Then what I want to do here is I want to copy and paste this. So I'm just going to copy and paste the entire event, and I'm going to double click and hit back, and I'm going to change it to on key pressed, hit the up arrow, and then hit OK. All right, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to create our own variable jump height. So we want it to be able to, if we hold it down for longer, jump higher. And if we only hold it down for a little bit, then we want it to only jump for a little bit. So what we're going to do this is we're going to actually hit G after selecting an event. I'm going to call this my player control group and hit OK. I'm going to put these guys in there. And now I'm going to actually hit V on the keyboard, and that's going to create a new local variable. So that's only accessible to the scope of this group. And what I want to do here is I want to call this jump height. And do I need to give it a value? Let me think if I need to give it a value here. Yeah, I'm going to give it a value of, you can make this value, you can mess around with whatever it is. The jump height value is really going to be what the y-axis lowers itself to. So I'm going to put it to low. I'm going to go to -2, but I've messed around with -5 before and I haven't had any issue whatsoever. So what we're going to do is we are going to actually invert the first statement here. This is our condition. So we have our event and then we have our condition. And what I want to do is I want to invert this condition by hitting I on the keyboard, or when I have the condition selected, hit I. And now what this is going to say is if the keyboard up arrow is not held down. And this event, which is separate from this one, is going to say if the keyboard's up arrow is being pressed. So with that, what we can do now is we can hit B. And when we hit B on the keyboard, we can actually create a sub-event. And sub-events are very important, and this is actually how we're going to structure our code. You want to make sure that you have the trigger first and then the code to perform. Otherwise, it might get a little messed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to double-click and add a new condition, a new sub-condition to our player. We're going to say player. Now, since we added all of these behaviors, we're going to see more conditions that we can add to that behavior. So since we had the flash behavior, now we have flash conditions. Same thing for the platform and same thing for the timer. So the platform behavior comes with a whole lot of conditions to mess around with, and they're all pretty much suited for your needs. So what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the player is jumping, and if so, what are we going to do? Then we're going to go and add the action. So if the up arrow is not down, but we're jumping, then what we want to find out is, we want to do really, is we want to actually set the vector Y. So like I said before, this is, the vector Y is going to be in negative to make it go up on the game, and it's going to be positive to go down. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to our jump height, just like that, and hit OK. And I will demonstrate this and show it to you when we finish. But that is what we're going to do for if the up arrow is not down. If the up arrow is being pressed, then what we want to do is we want to hit B on the keyboard, and we want to double click on this, and we want to go to our player. And this time we want to see if our player is on the floor or not. And if it is, then we also want to copy this and hit paste. And if our player is on the floor, then we want to set the vector y to itself dot jump, which we set at -550. So technically you could make the jump height its own instance variable. Doesn't really matter. Just by showing off that you can do local variables, it works either way. And there we go. So now we have our jump height for our arrow keys. So what I want to do is I want to leave the local jump height there. And I want to group these. I want to call these the arrow keys. And I want to put this in there. Now for the arrow keys, I want to add another condition. So I'm going to grab this group and I'm going to hit B. And I want to actually, this is going to be the condition that I'm going to have to carry over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go double click on this blank condition, go to plugins, keyboard, and then I want to find out if the key right arrow and left arrow are down. So now we're pretty much doing what we turned off. We're just actually resetting it so we can turn it on and off later by activating and deactivating the arrow keys group. And that's going to be something that's very apparent throughout this series, because by deactivating and activating, you get so much control. You just have to keep organized and make sure what you're doing actually works. All right, so what we're going to do for if the right arrow is down, very simple, and this is pretty much the basic as it gets. We're going to go to our player, and since it's already facing to the right, what we're going to do is set it to not mirrored. So let's do that first. Let's type in mirrored and make sure that it's not mirrored. Then I'm going to hit Control, and I'm going to drag it down to copy. It's a quick shortcut to copy. And if we're holding down the left arrow key, then we want to mirror our player. Now, vice versa, we have one more action to add, and that's since we turned off the default controls, there's nothing actually controlling the platform behavior. So we're going to go to our player, and we're going to go to Simulate Control under the platform, and this is going to be Simulate Control to the right, and I'm going to put that on top of the mirrored. I'm going to Control click this down, and this is going to be Simulate Control to the left. All right, cool. So now we've handled our variable jumping for our arrow keys, and we've handled our movement for our arrow keys. Okay, so now that we have that done, we actually get the luxury of just copying and pasting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to call this WASD because that's the second most popular type of keyword function you can have for your character. And what I'm going to do is replace. So I'm going to double click on our on up arrow is not down, and I'm going to change it to W. And I'm going to do the same thing for the up arrow pressed and change that to W. Now for the right arrow, I'm going to put it to A. And for the left arrow, I'm going to put it to, D, and for the left arrow, I'm going to put that to A. We don't have the S there, so it's technically WASD, but we are going to use the S for the wall jump in a moment. So now that we have that, we are pretty much done with programming for WASD. And now that was pretty easy. So what I can do yet again is I can copy and paste. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this up for the Gamepad. So to set up for the Gamepad, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V, edit, type in Gamepad. And now all of these are going to be tied to a local storage variable that'll then decide which group to use, which group to turn on or turn off. And we'll program that in later when it actually happens, when we actually have the menu item to do that. For testing purposes, we're going to deactivate whichever group we want to use. I'll probably deactivate all of these except for WASD because I like using WASD over the arrow keys. Feel free to make whatever controls you want. Okay, so for the Gamepad, we have to do things a little bit differently. We can actually leave everything else the same, but we can actually just replace these conditions here. So what we're going to do is we are going to Control X this, Control X this, Control X this, and Control X this. And what we want to be able to do here is we want to find out if we're jumping, if we're on the floor. We want to actually set the Gamepad axis. So let me figure out how we're going to set this axis here. So we have our not mirrored and our mirrored right here. I'm going to put this on top, and we're actually going to redo the way that our jumping and on the floor looks, because it's going to actually be the same exact thing, but we need it to be in an and statement. So I'll get to that in a second here. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this condition, and we're going to go to our plugins, and we're going to go to Gamepad. Now our Gamepad plugin's in here by default because we have a retro style project. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare the axis. Now, when we compare the axis, we want to actually compare the axis to Gamepad 0 because that's the first player. 1 would be player 2. And what we want to do here is we want to compare the left analog axis, and we want to find out if it's greater than 0. Now that is the very basic way of doing gamepad movement that you'll see on the website, on the Skira tutorials, or on the Skira forum, like the help page. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm just going to flip this. Not the analog, not the axis, just the less than sign. And now we're moving left, and that's perfectly fine. And you can get perfect gamepad movement from that, minus the fact that we're not limiting the y-axis. And this is where some more extensive research came in handy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit C after selecting this condition, and I'm going to actually go to my gamepad, and I'm going to compare the y-axis. So I'm going to change this to left analog y-axis for gamepad 0. And what I want to find out is I want to find out if it's less than gamepad.axis 0, 0. What this means is it's going to compare between negative 100 and 100. And I'm going to actually debug this and show to you so you can see how it's going to work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this to add in one more condition. Now, if you don't know already, when you have conditions like this, when you have more than one condition, by default, this means and. So if the left analog x-axis is greater than 0 and the left analog y-axis is less than the gamepad axis of 0, 0, and the left analog axis is, I need to change this, is greater than, let's go to greater than negative gamepad.axis 0, 0. Then simulate right, and then set not mirrored. If you want this to be or, all you have to do is select all of this and hit Y on the keyboard, and now it's going to say if this or this or this is true, then do this. But we don't need that for this, so we're not going to do that. I'm going to do this again. So what I want to do here is I want to copy and paste this. So I'm going to say copy, paste, except I'm going to flip the negative. So I want the negative to be for less than, and I want it to be greater than without the negative. So what this is going to do is it's going to limit our y-axis. And if you've ever messed with the gamepad before, you're going to notice that it's not exactly that simple when it comes to limiting the y-axis. So if we didn't put this in, what would happen is we could hit up on the left analog, and it would actually start to move right or left. And we didn't want that. We needed to actually tell the gamepad plugin to limit the y-axis so it's only at negative 100 and 100. So to debug this, let me show you what we're going to do. I'm going to add the event to a system. I'm going to type in every tick, and this is going to be something that I like to have on the very top. And I'm going to put in the start of layout as well. These are two very important events, conditions that you need, and I like to put them on the top of all of my event sheets just so I know where I'm at. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to actually, in the every tick, we're going to add a debug. So now I'm using NWJS, so I'm going to take advantage of that. And this is pretty much the only thing of NWJS I'm going to take advantage of, because I don't know how many of you are using that versus Chrome or any browser whatsoever, but you can just, you can debug this to a text box, you can debug it to the output, whatever you want to do. So what we're going to do is on every tick, we are going to go to our plugins, and we're going to go to NWJS here, and we're going to set the title of our window. Now, there's other things that I actually want to put in here, so let me actually do that first. What I want to do here is I want to type in project and hit project name. Then I want to hit and this is going to be a string of whatever I inputted as the project name. Then I want to also grab the project version. Cool. So now that I have that, I'm going to hit and I'm going to hit quotation mark as a blank string. And in that blank string, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a space. I'm going to put this as our gamepad. Then I'm going to hit and again, because now we're out of our blank string. And what I want to do is I want to find out gamepad axis 0, 0 and hit OK. So let me hit save and let me hit play and let me get my gamepad. So now you can see here, well, one, we're kind of having some issues. Wow, we're having a whole lot of issues there. I wonder what that's about. Let's see. It could be the origin points. It could be the bounding box is not happy with us. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to right click set to bounding box, and I'm going to right click apply to all animations. And it could be the origin point could be unhappy with us, apply to all animations, but it could also very well be the collision is unhappy with us. So we're gonna have to figure that out in a second. Let's see if I can get through this without having to fix that. That's an interesting one. Oh, I know why. It's because we have all of these going at the same time. So what we need to do, or it's because, okay, let's just disable these guys. So to do so, we're going to edit, active on start, just tick that off, edit, active on start, take that off, and let's see if that fixes it. Let's hope it fixes it. Okay, cool. So we were just getting conflicting things there, which is fine. But actually, let me activate that one, deactivate that, and let's activate this one so we can test our gamepad. So what you're going to see, or is it the gamepad that's causing this? It might be. Oh, it's because of the jumping. Ah, that makes more sense. Live debugging. It's totally fine. Okay, so now that we figured that out, let's grab our gamepad if you have one. If not, obviously, then you can't tell. But when I move the left analog, and you can see up there the number, I'm moving to the right, it's at 100. I'm moving to the left, it's at -100. Now, this is perfectly on the x-axis, but if I go to the y-axis, you can see where it's going. And this is why we're limiting it, because we want to know if it's greater than the negative or less than the positive. And we want to do that for left and right. And now when I actually push this down, you can actually see that it's not moving our character at all, which is what we wanted. And that's actually not something that comes included, and it's kind of harder to find. Okay, cool. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and hopefully you can understand how we got there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to fix that bug that we just had. So to do this, I'm just going to do this differently just because we can, and also because I want the and statement. What I did here was I actually disabled everything. So by doing that, all I have to do is hit select and then hit D again, and it'll actually remove the strike through. And that's how you can disable code real fast, and you can just figure out what went wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this condition up here. We're going to put this up here, and we're going to get rid of the blank sub event. I'm going to put this up here and this up here. We're going to get rid of that blank sub event. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit C on the keyboard, and this is for the jumping. So what we want to do is we want to find out if the plugin gamepad, we want to find out if the button down, and in this case, the jump button is going to be A. We want to find out if it's not down. And let's put this on top just because. And we want to find out if it's not down, so to do so, we just have to hit I on the condition to invert it. So now we can say if the gamepad button A is not down, but the platform is jumping, or not but, and the platform is jumping, then set the platform vector Y to -2. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to copy this condition, and we're going to hit paste. Then we're going to take off the inversion by hitting I again, and then we're going to set it to the what did we put it to? -550? Yes, -550. And you can mess around with -550. You can have that be higher. I think we're going to be doing that for our wall jump very shortly here. But now you can see we're moving left and right. And now when I hold down the A key, we're moving all the way to -550. If I just press it, not so much. So there you go. And we also have our jump sustain, which is 30 milliseconds, which you can mess around with. And all of these parameters you can really start to tweak and mess around with. So if I click on the player here, you can mess around with this. And anything higher than -550, or if we go to like -850, then it'll go up to the very top of the level. Anything lower won't go up as high. All right, cool. So that's our gamepad, and that's our player control. Let's set up our animations, and let's set up our wall jump and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is, you know what, I'll deactivate this, and I'll activate WASD until we're ready. I'm going to hit save. And let's go look at our animations here. So it's actually going to be a lot easier to set up than we think. What we're going to do is we're going to make a new group. So I'm going to hit B. Actually, I'm going to hit G on our group, and I'm going to call this animations. I could call this player animations, but I don't think we're going to have any other animation group like this. So I think we're good there. I'm going to select all of these and just move them up. What we're going to do is we're going to have a very similar conditions here, but we want to have them separate so we can actually, again, turn it on and off, but also just so it's global. So that way we're not setting the conditions in other groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click and go to our player, and we want to find out if our player is jumping. Now, if it is, all we have to do is go to our player, set the animation to jump. Now I'm going to try to keep them all capital. I believe I didn't set the enemy walk to all capital, so let me redo that. That way I just know what animation I'm calling, and I know exactly how to spell it. Okay, so if we're jumping, then we're going to set the animation to the jump frame. Let me copy and paste this, and let me invert, or let me just change this condition by double clicking on it and picking falling. So if we're falling, then let's set the animation to, I believe I called it fall. I might have called it falling. Let's see. No, I called it fall. We're going to set it to fall. Perfect. So after that, then we just have to set for our idle and for our walk. So to do that, I'm just going to, again, copy and paste. And what I want to do here is I want to say if we're on the floor. So let's double click on this and let's find out if we're on the floor. And what I want to do here is I want to have this have its own sub event. So let's hit B to make our own sub event for if the player's on the floor. Now what we want to find out is if we're actually moving. So if we're on the floor, and if we're moving, then we want to set the animation to walk. Now this is going to check to see, this is only going to check, and this needs to be capital, if we're on the floor first. And this can get a little confusing if you're brand new to Construct 2, because if you do it the other way where you just have it is moving, then it's always going to be moving when it's moving left or right, even if it's in the air. So you want to make sure that you do the main condition or the main trigger first, and then have a sub condition, and then trigger the action that you're trying to get. So the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to hit B to add another blank sub event instead of copying and pasting. And what I want to do here is I want to copy this condition and paste it in there and invert it. So if we're not moving, then we can set our animation to idle. And technically what we could do is we could put that in, and we can always check to see if we're on the floor for that, but this should work perfectly fine. So if we hit play, and I'm using WASD now, we can see here that I'm idle, I'm walking, I'm jumping, and I'm falling. Perfect. So now everything is set up except for the animation speed. So let's go change that. Let's go to our player, and let's change our idle to be 5. Oops, I dropped that down. Let's change our idle to be 5 frames a second. And let's change our walk to be 10. And then everything else is a frame, so we don't need to change it at all. We just need the ones that have more than one frame. So walking, idle, walking, and idle. Perfect. There we go. So now our player is finally working as intended, and it looks pretty good. I'm very happy with this. So, but now we need to trigger our other animation, which is our wall slide. So let's do that. What we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to add in our PowerUp. So let's go do that. Let's grab our PowerUp and let's put it in here. Like right around there is where I had it in the demo. So let's leave it somewhere around here. I have Snap to Grid turned on, but we might not want it to be turned on for placing this, and that's perfectly okay. Before we add spikes, we're just going to have this here. Actually, you know what? Let's put it, where do we have a wall? Let's just put it here so we can test it out faster than me running all the way down there. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in, it's going to be in our own group, but it's not going to be in the player control group. It's going to be in its own PowerUp group. So let's add a new condition here. We want to find out if the player collides with the PowerUp. And if so, what is going to happen? So let's make a group first. Let's call this PowerUp. And let's put this in there. And what we want to do is we want to actually then set our Boolean instance value to true. So let's go to our player. Let's set the Boolean of PowerUp enabled to true. And once we're done with that, we can destroy the PowerUp because we've collided with it, and now we've actually activated it. So what we can do here before we actually finish this event is we can actually set our jump to be higher. So we were talking about it a second ago where you can mess around with the jump to be 850 or whatever. Let's actually set it to something lower than 850 because I think 850 will hit the ceiling. So let's go to our player. Let's set the value of our jump instance variable to negative because otherwise it'll go down. Let's go 775. So when you collide with this PowerUp, then you have just increased your jump height, which is actually pretty important to get to the other stages in the level, which actually influence the gameplay. So now that we have this done, and when we get to it, when we add in sound effects, we'll add in some sounds that'll go here as well. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our selection onto the group and we're going to hit B. And in this case, we want to double click and go to our player, and we want to see if our Boolean instance variable is set. And what that means is it true or is it false? So if PowerUp enabled is true, if I hit invert, that would mean false or not true. If our power up is enabled, then what do we want to have happen? The first thing that we want to have happen is we want to actually make a sub event. So let's do that. Let's hit B. And what we're going to do here is we're going to check to see if all of our 3 player control triggers are pressed or not. So what we want to do is we want to go to our keyboard. So let's go plugins, keyboard, unpressed, key W. If that is pressed, then we are going to we're going to hit Y, and that's going to enable the OR statement. So if I hit C now to add in another condition, I'm going to go to plugins, gamepad, and I want to find out if the button is being pressed, not down, for the jump. So this is just our jump controls. If this is true, which once we collide with the power up, it is, and if we are pressing one of our 3 inputs, and then the final one, I can just copy and paste this and change to our up arrow, then what is going to happen? So I hope that at this point in time, you've already seen how all this logic works. It's all about setting the trigger first and then triggering the action. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select this, and we're actually going to group it. So let's hit G, and let's call this our wall jump. Let's put this in the wall jump group just in case, because we're going to need to disable it at some point. So what we want to do here is we want to check to see, and I'm going to hit B again. We want to check to see if the player has the wall to the right or to the left. And if it does, then we need to kick it out, because this is a wall jump and we want to push it out usually on the X-axis. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to double click, go to our player, and we're going to check to see, because the platform object is so great, if it's by a wall. We're going to check to see if it's by, let's try the right wall first. So if the player is jumping and it's by a wall to the right, then what we're going to do is we're going to set the vector X and Y of the player to kick out. So let's go set vector X of the player to -500. Let's copy and paste this, and let's do it for the vector Y as well. Set the vector Y to -500. Let me scroll down there. Then what we're going to do is copy and paste this, and we're going to do the inverse, so to the left. And if so, then we're going to set the vector Y to -500, because negative is still going up, not down, but we're going to set the vector X to be +500, so it'll actually go to the right. So we're just inversing it, and all of this will make sense in a second. So now that we have our wall jump, we're pretty much good to go there, but we actually have to add in our wall slide. And this is where we're actually going to be setting our animation, and we're going to be setting our cool trail effect. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to need to do this exact same thing, but with a little bit different triggers. So we're going to copy and paste the wall jump because it'll be easier to start off that way. We're going to edit it and call it wall slide. And what we're going to do for our wall slide is we're going to check to see if S is down. So let's click S. Actually, let's go back. Let's go key is down. Let's click S is down. Or in this case, for our gamepad, we want it to be button X, or if X is down. So let's actually do that as well. If the X button is down, or if the down arrow is down. Now this is just mapping the wall slide. So if you have a wall to the left or right and you hold down one of these buttons, then you're going to slide down the wall slowly versus just falling down. So this is going to be the down arrow, and hit OK. Then what we want to do is we actually want to merge these. We want to put this like that, and we want to hit Y, because this isn't like our jump. This is just for our sliding down a certain wall. What we want to do here is we want to actually just set the vector Y to be 50, which is going to slow down our vector Y to the ground until it hits the ground, because negative means going up and positive means going down on the Y axis. So what I want to check here is I want to actually have this have one more trigger. So to do this, I'm going to hit B and move this up, and I'm going to move this into it. So now it's a triple nested sub event here. So let's go back. Let's double click on this, or let's just hit C if I can't double click properly. And let's go to our player, and let's find out if we're not jumping. So if we are just hugging the wall. So we have to find out if we are jumping, then we need to find out by hitting I on the keyboard to see if we are not jumping. So if we're not jumping and we have a wall to the right or to the left, then we're going to set the vector Y to 50. So we're doing a lot. I hope all of this is making sense because there's a few more things we have to do. I'm going to try to cover as much as I possibly can in this lecture. We still have a few more things to go over, but we might go back and add some particle effects to certain things that I didn't have time to import or implement. So we'll come back to that. But what I want to do now is I just want to find out one last thing, and that is I want to set the animation. So let's do that. Let's set the animation to our player to be wall slide. Okay, so now we can test this out. Let's hit play. And now we should have a wall jump and a wall slide, which will actually be really nice to have. So let's go. Let's collect this. It's going to destroy itself. And now when I go to a wall, I should be able to hold down S and slide just like that. Let me go to a bigger wall so you can see what's going on here. And now actually my jump is a whole lot higher too, which is really nice. So here's a bigger wall. I can hold down S and now we're sliding, and our wall jump image or animation is facing the other way, which looks really cool. So let's do a kick out. Let's hold down S, but let's hold down, or let's just press W since I'm using this. Or let me just do that where I can just jump and then kick out. And let's go to the other wall and do that as well. And this is going to be our wall jump and wall slide, and I feel like this will make a lot more sense when we actually have sound involved. But just like that, there we go, which is really cool. And I noticed that you could see one of our like our convo box over there, but we'll get that out of the way later. So there we go. We have our wall jump and our wall slide. Let's implement our cool trail effect before we finish up this lecture here. So to do our trail effect, we're actually going to have to put this all underneath our power up. So let's go back. Let's hit B. And what we want to do here is we want to make a way for it to, we want to start it off inactive, and we only want it to activate when we tell it to. So let's actually hit G on the keyboard, and let's call this our trail. And let's put this blank sub event there. And let's actually go to our wall jump. And let's actually, wait, it's not our wall jump. Where is it going to be? We're going to set it to, where do I want to set it to be activated? Oh, you know what? I want to set it right here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to set this group trail to be active. So we're going to go to System. We're going to type in Group Active, and we're going to type in Trail. By default, we're going to right-click Edit, just like we've been doing with the other controls, and we're going to turn off Active on Start. We only want it to be activated when we have the power up and when power up is enabled. Okay, so now that we have it being activated in our trail group, what we want to have is we want to check to see if we're falling or jumping. So to do this, we're just going to double click on our player. We're going to see if it's jumping. We're going to hit Y to set it up for another condition. I'm going to copy and paste this, and now you can see that it's going to say if it's jumping or if it's falling. What we're going to do is we're going to have the system create our trail object, which we already have implemented. So let's type in system create object, and let's go to our object. Where is it? Object trail. Cool. And what we want to do is we want to create it on the layer entities where our player is. And what we want to do is we want to set it to our object player.x, and we want to set it to our object player.y. Just like that, and hit OK. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to make sure that we're setting the trail to be underneath our player, so it's never on top of our player, otherwise that would look funny. So we're going to go add a new action to our trail, and we're going to say Z order move to bottom every time it's created. And actually what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put this into, I'll do that in a second actually. We're going to repeat this. Actually, let's do that now. So if we're jumping or if we're falling, let's select this, let's hit B on the keyboard, let's double click and go to our system, and let's find out if we can repeat this a certain number of times. Since we're creating an object, we can actually have the benefit of repeating it. How many times do we want to repeat this trail? Well, we only want to repeat it once, because if we repeated it more than once, it would create, however many. If we repeated it 10 times, it would create 10 objects in the same exact spot at that given point in time, and that would just create too many objects, and that would ruin your game. So we're only going to create one object, and we're going to move it to the bottom of the layer after we create it, so it'll always be underneath our player, otherwise it would look silly. Then what we want to do is we want to actually go to our object trail and give it some behaviors. So what we want to do is we want to go to our object trail, which I can just select from the objects window here, and then I can actually go to my properties here without having to go to the layout, and I can add some behaviors to it. The behavior I want to add is a fade behavior, and I want to add a rotation behavior, as well as a bullet behavior. Oops, and hit enter. So the bullet behavior is going to act as a way to actually control the angle of motion, and we're going to actually leave it all at the default settings, but we are going to change the other settings a little bit. So in our behavior settings here, what we're going to do is we're going to fade in for a second, and that's going to create our cool trail effect because we're already fading out for a second. So we're going to fade in, then we're going to fade out, and then we're going to destroy after we fade out, which will actually take care of all the objects that we have. Then what we want to do is we want to actually rotate 360 degrees. This is just kind of like a fun thing to add in because it's a swirl. You can change this trail effect to be anything you want. You can actually put it to the player itself to make it look more like a dash effect if that's something you want to do. I just thought it'd be something cool to throw in there. And then I think we're good on our bullet. So what we're going to do with our bullet is we're actually going to set the angle of the bullet. And this is a very common way to set a lot of angles. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our trail, and you're going to see we're going to use the bullet behavior for more things than just an actual bullet, since there are no bullets in this game. We're actually going to use it for our platforms. What we're going to do is we're going to set the angle of motion to 360 degrees, and then what we're going to do is set the bullet speed to 1. And by doing so, this will actually track the player and actually follow along rather than going in some crazy motion. So let's set the speed of it to 1. All right, I think we have done a whole lot in this lecture. We've done, and I think we might do a few more things, but that's a whole lot to get started with. And so we're going to test that out in a second here. I just want to think if there's anything else that we need to add. Let's think. So now we have our trailing thing that should work pretty well. We're probably going to go over where we need to deactivate this. So we have it activated, but if we're sliding, we don't want it to continue to trail, otherwise it'll look funny. So let's copy this and let's paste this here, and let's put this on top, and let's double click and set it to deactivated, so that way it has some form of deactivation. Otherwise it'll just be always active, and we don't need it to be active on our wall slide, but we can have it active for other things because this is only going to happen if we're jumping and if we're falling. Okay, cool. So let me add one more thing to our title here just so we can track it. We can get rid of the gamepad stuff, but let's add in our object, I believe it's called object count. Is it? It's not popping up, but let me hit OK. And what this is going to do is tell us how many objects are currently on the scene. And that's very important because we're going to have a lot of objects by the end of this, and we want to make sure that we know what's going on. So let me hit play there, and let's just go play this. Let's go collect our power up. Awesome. So we just have to change the size, but everything's working really well. I'm very happy with how that's working. Let's set the size to something smaller. To set the size, what we're going to do is we're just going to go over here, and let's actually double click on this. And first thing is, oops, I just reset the origin. So let me set the origin to the middle. Let me hit crop, which is one of my favorite tools. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the size of the sprite. We're not going to set the size of the image, but we're going to set the size of this to be 16 by 16. That way it's a little bit smaller than the player itself, so it kind of looks like it came out of the player instead of being the same size as the player. So let's go jump over there. Let's grab this, and there we go. And the rotation just kind of adds something cool for this swirling effect, but it's by no means something you need to have. You can have your own image that doesn't rotate, and you can mess around with that. So I think this is looking cool. If there's anything else that I'm missing from these kind of lectures, I'll make sure that I cover everything and go back and add them in. But now that we have our power up, we can do our wall slide, we can kick out. And when we do our wall slide, we're not trailing anything, it stops. And you can see our object count here, which is kind of encroaching our 1.0 there. You can see that it's going to create more and then delete more. So here it goes, it creates almost 80 objects, and then it deletes and goes back down to 19 objects. So there's a lot to be said for that, but there we go. We have our cool trail, we have our wall slide, we have our player controls. We've added a whole lot in this lecture. Let's see how many more things we can add. I'm trying to think. What I want to add now is I kind of want to add more, but I think it actually makes more sense to break this up into a secondary lecture. That way we can actually spend more time on doing more level design stuff, because what we have left to do is we have to actually add in our spikes, we have to add in our platforms, we have to add in some coins and some arrows. So we're going to do that in the next lecture. That way it's just easier for you to follow along and not listen to me talk about code and just add in all this stuff. So that'll be a lot more fun for you. So thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you in the next video.